This is how I make a nicoise salad. When I originally had started with my current clients, I was told he had trouble digesting lettuces, so we didn't have any salads for the first year. But we recently gave it a chance and he appears to be fine, which is always great news. We've unlocked a whole new category of meals. But we are starting slow as to not stress out his stomach. One salad we have quite often is a nicoise salad, which originated in France. Now, since we want to keep the salad gentle on my client's stomach, we only use ingredients that are fairly gentle on the digestive system. I've always made a nicoise with a herb-heavy vinegar and olive oil dressing, but my clients prefer a basil-heavy balsamic dressing. Before we get into the prep, this is what my clients had for lunch. An American-style omelet with roasted mushrooms, tomatoes, spinach, cheddar cheese, and toast. Now, first thing I do is make the dressing. This is white balsamic. I feel like white balsamic isn't an ingredient that is known by a lot of people, but I think more people should. I find it lighter than traditional balsamic, and it doesn't turn your dressings dark like regular balsamic. Not that it matters for this salad because I didn't have enough white balsamic anyways. I grate garlic into the vinegar, add regular balsamic, Dijon mustard, honey for sweetness. I had a good amount of honey because my clients like their dressing on the sweet side. Extra virgin olive oil, and then avocado oil. I do about half and half because I find pure extra virgin olive oil tends to be a bit overpowering. I had some chives, so I added those, a bunch of chiffonade basil, and salt to season. Whisk it all together and that's it. He likes his nicoise with grilled salmon and she likes hers with a salmon salad. So I gently bake one portion of salad that I coat with olive oil and season the other one to be grilled. While that's baking, I prep the salmon salad. I dice celery for crunch and texture, cut chives, lots of dill, add a little bit of mayo, Dijon, relish, parsley, fresh lemon juice, a touch of salt, and give that a mix. Once the salmon has cooled, I throw it in chunks, gently break that up and combine. I want it to be combined but not pulverized together. If you want it creamier, add in more mayo. Punchier, lemon juice or Dijon. More vibrant, more herbs. Sweeter, more relish. Play around until you find your ideal balance. They won't be having this tonight, so I arranged the salad with lettuce, blanched green beans, boiled potatoes, cherry tomatoes, cucumbers, olives, the salmon salad for her, and the grilled salmon for him. And can't forget the hard-boiled eggs. This is an excellent meal prep idea as well, since all you need to do is drizzle the vinaigrette over and you're ready to eat. What's your favorite healthy meal prep dish? Here's your sign to make your own chirashi bowl at home with friends. First of all, what is a chirashi bowl? It's basically a bowl of seasoned sushi rice, raw fish, and whatever else you want to add on to it. It's fully customizable to what you want to eat, which I think is beautiful. I think making a chirashi bowl is the best entryway to playing around with sushi at home. The first and most important part of the chirashi bowl is the sushi rice. You're gonna need a short grain rice like koshihikari, which is what I personally use. I wash 2¼ cups of rice about 3 times or until the water runs mostly clear. Then I let all the water drain for about 20 minutes so that my water to rice ratio is as accurate as possible. While that's drying, I make the sushi vinegar, which is very easy to make. It's simply rice vinegar, salt, sugar, and kombu. I like to use a mix of red rice vinegar and regular rice vinegar, but I couldn't get my hands on any. Anyways, just let the salt and sugar dissolve and the kombu infuse into the vinegar while I prep the rest of the ingredients. Once the rice is dry, I let the rice soak with 2½ cups of cold filtered water for 20 more minutes. This is so that the rice soaks up that water, improves texture, and it cooks more evenly. I cook my rice in my donabe, but you can just use the rice cooker. I steam for 15 minutes, then let it rest for an additional 20 minutes to finish cooking. My first component is ebi, or shrimp. I got these black tiger prawns and I use these very thin skewers and push through so that they stay straight while they cook. Then boil in salted water for 60 to 90 seconds depending on the size of the shrimp, and shock in ice water to stop them from overcooking. While those are chilling out, we get onto the fun stuff. I bought all my fish and this tamago, or Japanese rolled egg, that's made with a sweetened dashi from Yamasushi in K-Town. It's hands down the best affordable sushi grade fish you can get in Los Angeles. For the tamago, I just cut them in thick slices and on a bias. The reason why I say making a chirashi bowl is the best entryway to playing around with sushi is because you can get practice cutting raw fish. It doesn't matter if it's cut too thin, too thick, unevenly, or even weird shaped. It'll still be delicious and help you improve for the next time. For my chirashi bowl, I went with tuna, salmon, hamachi, and Hokkaido scallops. I like them cut a little bit on the thicker side, but you can cut them however you'd like. Make it your own. Now that the shrimp have chilled, I remove the legs and shell, trim the ugly bits, and slice them in half from the stomach to the back, leaving that little flap of skin so that they stay connected. I also like to let them sit in a little bit of that seasoned sushi vinegar. Now that the rice is done, I pour it into a large bowl, pour the sushi vinegar evenly over the rice, and gently start to break up the larger clumps of rice. You don't want to be too rough or mix it too much. The more you touch it, the stickier it gets. Just fluff it around until the rice is coated. At my first sushi job, I had to make sushi rice for a month every day before I was even allowed to serve it to the customers. It's taken very seriously. All that's left to do is plate it up. Sushi rice on the bottom, a few slices of nori, tamago, ebi, hamachi, salmon, tuna, scallops, avocado rose, a few radish sprouts, pickled ginger, and a wasabi leaf. And it's time to eat. What would your choices be? Here's what I made as a personal chef in Beverly Hills. Today we got Copper River salmon. Copper River is probably the most expensive kind of salmon because of its short season and high fat content. The season is usually from May to June and the color is unmistakable. The deep red hue, and it's absolutely gorgeous. It's also about $80 a pound. Kinda wild. I portioned these guys and I seasoned them with this umami salt that I got from Yamasushi with black garlic and shiitake mushrooms. I've basically been using these on all my proteins. This stuff is pretty salty, so I make sure to use a little bit less than I think I need. The starch for today is sweet potatoes, so I just gave these guys a quick rinse and into the oven to get roasting. We got these multicolored string beans from the farmer's market, so I thought a nice green bean salad would be a great veg side, especially since it is getting so hot here in LA. By the way, the sad thing about these beautiful purple string beans is that once you cook them, that color will disappear. Let me know if you guys know of a way to preserve that color, but I haven't been able to find a way. I pluck all the stems and blanch them separately in salted water. I do them separately because the thickness of these guys are all different, which means they each need to be cooked for a different amount of time, and also the color will leach into the water and I don't want them to look all muddy. To make the dressing for the string beans, I combine lemon zest, lemon juice, grated garlic, Dijon mustard, honey for sweetness, extra virgin olive oil, and a little bit of salt. I dress the string beans about 30 minutes before serving because I wanted them to soak in some of that vinaigrette. String beans, pistachios, citrus, and salmon go amazing together, so I just toasted chopped pistachios and a little bit of extra virgin olive oil to enhance the flavor and also to crisp them up for a nice textural contrast. Once they're nicely toasted, I pull them onto a paper towel to soak up any of that excess oil. 15 minutes before serving, I pat the skin dry on the salmon to prevent sticking and oil splatter. Get them into my heated and oiled carbon steel pan to get that skin crispy. And when I cook fish, I place it down and I don't touch it until the skin gives way on its own. Once it gets crispy, it'll separate itself from the pan, but if you try to move it before then, the skin's gonna stick and you're gonna end up with a mess. Now it's time to plate. We got the citrus honey Dijon dressed string bean salad, smoky tomato jam that I messed up recording, crispy skin copper salmon, and our roasted sweet potato. And can't forget the crispy pistachios. Fully balanced, healthy light lunch. This was my day as a personal chef in Beverly Hills. First things first, I want you to look at my chives. I started the marinara for the eggplant parm. Simply sweat down some diced onions and olive oil and a bit of salt. After a few minutes, when the onions have softened, I add in some crushed garlic and tomato paste. This is something I've always got to reiterate. Please caramelize your tomato paste. Give it time to caramelize those sugars and to get rid of that harsh metallic raw tomato flavor. It makes an absolutely massive difference. Also be careful to not let it burn. Then add tomato passata, which is basically just pureed tomatoes. I season it with Italian seasoning and let that cook for as long as possible. If you're wondering why these eggplants are so skinny, that's because these are Japanese eggplants. They're skinnier, have less seeds, and tend to be less bitter than regular Italian eggplant. You can probably skip this step, but I like to do it. I toss them with kosher salt and let them sit overnight to pull out any excess moisture. And the next day, it has some old chives and garlic chives, so I trimmed them, blanched them, and shocked them in ice water to preserve that color. Squeeze out any excess water, then cut them into smaller strands and blend with avocado oil to make a super flavorful green chive oil. And I put it through a fine mesh strainer and just let that slowly go through. And then a second time through a paper towel. If I was smarter, I would have bought some cheesecloth, but unfortunately, I'm not that smart. Now this marinara has probably simmered for a combined 4 hours at this point, so it's basically ready to go. But I did add a bit of baking soda to lower the acidity, salt to season, and sugar to sweeten. My clients do like their eggplant parm on the sweeter side. I also made them their favorite dessert, the brownie cake. I'll make a separate video for this one, but honestly, I'm not that much of a baker. After an hour of cooking, I just finish it with a handful of fresh basil off heat and let that wilt into the sauce. I don't really like cooking fresh herbs. I find that it changes their flavor. Then for my least favorite thing in the world, breading. I season my panko breadcrumbs with Italian seasoning and grated Parmesan cheese. I won't bore you with this part. It's just flour, egg wash, then panko. I put them on a rack, spray them down with olive oil, and bake them until golden brown and crispy. To arrange the eggplant parm, I just layer sauce, crispy eggplant, parm, more sauce, mozzarella, and repeat. Cover with aluminum foil and bake in the oven. Then for the last 10 minutes, I remove the aluminum foil and let that cheese get golden brown. We're about 2 hours out until dinner, so it's time to prep the lobsters. I stick my spoons in through the stomach and out the butthole so that they stay straight when I blanch them. Boil them for 90 seconds just to set the outside and shock in ice water to stop the cooking. I want these basically raw on the inside. Then remove the spoons and gently remove them from the shells. For the beurre blanc, I sweat some minced shallots in butter, deglaze with white wine, cook off that alcohol, and start whisking in cold butter to create an emulsion. A little bit at a time so it doesn't get too cold, and throwing in butter if it starts getting too hot. If you go to either extremes, you'll end up with a thin, oily, broken sauce. I bag the lobsters with the beurre blanc and vacuum seal it. I hold it up like this so that it will seal without all that butter pouring out. Now that the guests have arrived, that means it's caviar time. 2 ounces of that Osetra caviar per couple. While they're snacking on that caviar, I pull out the eggplant parm, which is now beautifully golden brown, so that it can rest for 10 minutes. After those 20 minutes, I drain the lobsters and get ready to plate. I finish the beurre blanc with lemon juice to brighten it up, plenty of those chives, and I whisk in that chive/garlic chive oil. Spoon some marinara on the bottom of the plate, nice hefty chunks of that eggplant parm, butter poached lobster tail, pan roasted asparagus, and healthy spoonfuls of that lemony herb beurre blanc on top of the lobster and asparagus. Off they go. And finally for dessert, that warm fudgy brownie cake with some vanilla ice cream. Y'all want that recipe for the brownie cake? Chocolate brownie cake. It's finally here, what you've all been asking for. I've been making this for my clients for a while now. We call it chocolate brownie cake because it's just a super decadent giant brownie in the shape of a cake. It was initially made as a joke because we didn't have time to make a full cake, but still wanted something to put a candle in. For baking, I like to use Kerrygold unsalted butter. Their butter has an 82% butter fat compared to most American style butter, which has 80%. The higher butter fat percentage makes a richer tasting brownie cake. I like to melt my chocolate and butter in a double boiler. It's just a fancy way of saying a pot of boiling water on the bottom and a bowl on top. If you have a gas stove, I'd recommend you just bring that water to a hard boil, turning off the heat or lowering it to a very low level before throwing your bowl of chocolate and butter on top. Gas stoves are pretty inconsistent with the heat and you can accidentally burn the chocolate on the side of the bowl if your flame is too high. While that's melting, I whisk eggs and slowly temper in that melted chocolate and butter mix, starting off with a little bit at a time if it's still hot. You don't want chocolatey scrambled eggs. Then add a little bit of water and vanilla paste. Then I combine sugar, sifted all-purpose flour, cocoa powder, powdered sugar, salt, and give that a mix until it's fully combined. Then pour in the chocolate butter egg mix into the dried mix, then just fold it in until there are no more dried clumps. By the way, this whole thing is very sweet, so if you're not a fan of really sweet desserts, I'd recommend toning down the amount of sugar, but that's up to you. I cut a circle out of parchment paper for the bottom so that it's easy to pop out. I rub softened butter all over the sides and the bottom. Pour in that batter, sprinkle more chocolate chips on top because I'm nasty like that, and gently push some of them in. Then sprinkle with Maldon salt, bake in the oven at 325 degrees for 45 minutes or until the internal temperature is 200 degrees Fahrenheit. Then I let it cool, put a spatula around the sides and pop it out. Here's what it looks like. I'm telling you, this is so damn rich. Don't eat too much. You're gonna give yourself a tummy ache. And if you gently warm it, the center kind of turns into a molten lava cake if you're into that kind of thing. Enjoy. Let me know if you try it.